All right, day 2, HFMA. A lot of people back. Right?
Yeah, I love it. The excitement here and being in Denver, mile high, it's hard to beat this.
So Shay, thanks for coming, man.
Hey,
really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Good to see you.
Appreciate you having me on the show here.
It's a no-brainer for a guy like you.
Ha.
And we could talk all day. Well, you've been in the space a long time.
Yeah, so 12 years and loving every minute of it. I tell you, it's one of those careers you ask yourself, how'd you get in here?
Yeah.
And once you're in here, you realize it was a calling.
Yeah. We've had a lot of chats about that. It's amazing, friendships, and I always joke that there's only 86 people in the revenue cycle space. But yeah, I mean, I've chatted with you very recently a couple of times about a lot of topics in the RCM space. What I always like about your perspective is that you're passionate and authentic and sincere. Like, you mean what you say.
Yes.
Right? So, so what do you want to talk about? I mean, you got a lot of perspective to add. First of all, what are you doing now? You signed up for a new gig, huh?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. 2 months ago, I made the switch. I signed up with a company called CirclesX. I'm their chief sales officer, and we are a true technology company.
Yep.
You have to be careful because everybody loves to say tech, proprietary,
Yeah.
in rev cycle, but we actually have 170 patents.
Oh, wow.
And we are focused on Medicare payments because we know historically about 10% of those should have been paid by a third-party payer, i.e. auto, workers' comp. And so we're actually leveraging big data,
Yep.
IoT, Internet
Yep.
of Things. So we can tap into accelerometers in cell phones, GPS navigation systems. All these things actually capture accidents. When people are involved in an accident, it registers in your cell phone.
Yeah.
And so we're able to leverage that, be able to identify the third-party payer, whether it's Progressive, Geico, State Farm, and let them know, hey, under the MSP Act, you are responsible to pay this claim, right? And they have 60 days to respond. So this has been a game changer for me to have a true tech offering.
Yeah.
But also, too, it's one of those things, as a citizen, I just don't feel taxpayers should be paying for claims that should have been paid by another payer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And honestly, I think you would agree too, and it's not the fault of the hospital.
Yep.
Once a hospital leaves, once a patient leaves a hospital,
Yep.
it's hard to track them down.
Yep.
How do you get the information you need to get the claim properly adjudicated? So I feel like we're doing a big service for the hospitals, but also for taxpayers in general.
You know what I love about it? When we've talked about this, obviously, like anything big data, IoT, I'm big on being data hungry, making sure that you curate data and make it actionable, right? So the fact, in my career in revenue cycle, the use case you described has never been tackled in that way.
Never.
It's always been a very paper intense, high niche expertise.
Yes.
Lawyers knowing, state law, there's the federal law, there's the state law, TPL and that kind of stuff can be complicated. So the fact that you're automating it, right, is a big part of the topic.
And I think it's funny, everything you're saying speaks to my heart, right? I spent 10 years in complex claims.
Yeah.
Doing auto, work comp, denials. I spent 4 years as a P&C broker, right? So I've been on the payer side.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, it's very manual, it's very paper intensive. But the thing that gets me excited, Brian, is like, this technology's been around.
Yeah.
But I think us in healthcare, we're a little bit slower to adapt and adopt. But I think with COVID, it's really forced us all to get out of our comfort zone and say, look, what can we do to automate? How do we leverage big data?
Yeah.
Right? Because one, we need the money.
Yeah.
And we need it now.
Yep.
And resources are more challenged now than ever.
Yep.
I think providers will agree they don't have the FTEs they used to do things. So if you can automate,
absolutely,
much like with what you guys did, right?
Yeah.
You make the data actionable.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. I think one of the recurring themes in this series has been labor, productivity, staffing shortages. So it's the conversation is changing, as you know, to hey, we're having a hard time filling various spots on the assembly line here. So now these kinds of solutions are going to meet that sort of gap.
Yeah.
right? That operational gap and the leakage, right?
And it's crazy too because, I was at another HFMA event a month ago, and one of the providers said, listen, the conversation today is no longer about ROI. It's, I need help today.
Yeah.
Right? How do you help me overcome this IT challenge I have internally?
Yeah.
To get you implemented, I need the help. You don't have to sell me.
Yeah.
People know they need help.
Yeah. No, we're seeing the same thing. It's just we've had clients that are now like calling us and saying, I hear fancy speeches about AI and machine learning and bots. Like, come on, let's go.
We get it. And I think that's it. Like, everybody's been dropping, all the big names.
Yeah.
AI, machine learning.
Yeah.
But now that we're actually starting to see results come through, I think people are ready to start adopting.
Yeah, I think it's. But let's get into some pragmatism too, because I think that those of us that have to sell into the revenue cycle, it's a challenge, and when you're doing disruptive things, transformational things, it's a challenge. So, what's your perspective? Like, how do we stop kicking the can down the road? How do we get people excited? Because I'm passionate about the evangelism that's needed. Change management is just one of those things that sounds like some wonky, dorky back office process, but it's like the personal trainer. You can have the gym equipment and the diet plan, but if you don't have a personal trainer, right? Somebody like you knows that.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I see every day, Brian. It's rev cycle leaders are overworked.
Yep.
They have a budget they're trying to meet. And so the pushback I've got is, look, these claims have already been paid. I realize you're going to get me 5 to 6 times the amount of money.
Yeah.
But I've already closed my books. I need to move on.
Yeah.
And so then I posed the question to him. I said, look, if this was your personal money, would you do that?
Yeah.
If somebody said, hey, look, I found you $10 million.
Yeah.
I just need the data. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
60 days, I'm going to give you $10 million.
Yeah.
We'd all take it, right?
Well, and that's like a zero balance claim, like a triage consultant.
100%.
It's like the fact that you already have it written off. Well, that's the value. You give me some data, and let me go find you some gold, right?
Well, and the big piece of it is too, and I think this particular rev cycle leader changed his tune. And I said, well, listen, would you rather wait for a rack audit? Mm-hmm. And they come in and take the money, and guess what?
Right.
They're not telling you who to go get that replacement income from.
Right.
So with what we're doing, we're going to reduce the rack exposures, the gotchas, because again, you don't know when it's going to happen. They just take it.
Yep.
And we're going to give you significantly more revenue to replace it, and minimize the burden on Medicare.
Yep.
So I think that is one of the big things, because everybody has so much. Once they've kind of written something off, no more aging, we're done.
Yep.
They want to move on to the next thing because they've already got the next 18 months planned out on what they're going to do.
Yep.
And so, like you said, it's change management, trying to get people comfortable taking on things that maybe it's a little more work initially getting it set up.
Yeah.
But once it's set up, it's going to take care of itself.
Yeah.
And then the revenue will start coming.
Yeah. So let me also ask you this, because you've been in the space and you're one of the best LinkedIn guys, and you help a lot of people out and get them excited about things. So what's your perspective in the broader revenue cycle? Where's, because we often talk about, that there's so much opportunity. Where do you start? What's your advice on tackling waste and driving yield improvement in the revenue cycle from an innovation context?
So, number one, I think we're all seeing denials through the roof. We've seen huge spikes in the last 5 years. I think we need to figure out, how do we solve that?
Yep.
I know it's through a collaboration of technology, collaboration, but I think it's also, what can we do to improve those relationships with the payers?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I know providers are looking for true partners, people putting skin in the game. I've always been a big proponent the last 12 years of risk sharing.
Yep.
Let's be honest. Every vendor says, hey, look, I'm going to save you money. I'm going to get you money faster. But let's be real. What are you really going to do? right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't say that?
Yeah.
Put your money where your mouth is. Are you going to put some money, some skin in the game, and actually say, look, if we don't deliver, we're going to make you whole? I think that's what we need more of in these true partnerships. But I also think the world is getting smaller.
Yeah.
We're seeing massive consolidation, provider and on the vendor side.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, those people who think the way to get more business is by emailing and cold calls, I couldn't agree less.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work.
Like one of my CFO friends, I ran into him at the airport, he said, Shay, do you realize how many emails I get a day? 200. He goes, do you really think if I have a need for one of my patients, I'm going to go look in my spam filter and say, which one of you lucky devils am I going to let take care of my patients? Heck no. He said, look, I'm going to call you and say, who do you recommend? And I think, Brian, that's the value of having relationships like you and I. It's we may not have a solution, but we know somebody that can.
It's what I call relationship equity. You have to have relationship equity in this business, which means that you want relationship equity to drive your solutions, but you have to recommend people and people that you trust, right?
Right. And on that same vein, it's also having the transparency that as a business partner, to be very upfront and say, here's what I can and can't do.
Yeah.
As opposed to just saying, we'll get it done.
Yeah.
Because all you're going to do is have like a failed marriage.
Yeah, you have the intellectual honesty.
But you also need a provider that will be honest and say, hey, look, we realize we're asking things that are outside the scope.
Yep.
And as a partner, recognize that, hey, we'll do this in the spirit of the partnership.
Yeah.
But let's agree this is a partnership. We're going to work together, not when times get tough, you let us go because we're 2% higher.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like, how can we work together, share these burdens to kind of get through that?
Yeah. Well, you said something earlier that's part of my revenue cycle love language, which is, the payer and the provider and data in the middle, right? I'm going to keep it simple. And really thinking about, like, how do we, let's take an example of AR over 90 and there's $50 million. The reality is, as the provider goes to seek payment, a year and a half is going to go by, and they're going to get paid whatever, a payment to charge ratio of X cents on the dollar. It's going to eventually happen, and both parties are going to have tremendous cost of doing that. Why don't you just negotiate, and we'll have a settlement engine, and why don't we adjudicate like 50,000 accounts today? Because we know what's going to happen. Like, we have the data, the regression data to see what's going to happen. Let's have a real-time auction here, right? Because those are the kinds of things that, if we're going to get beyond the rhetoric of like, we're all going to, we need some big, chunky, chewy leapfrog moments, right? So, data's the new oil, big data. I always say, it does sound buzzwordy, but it's not going anywhere. Like, look at your company's a perfect example. IoT was one of those things that, 3 years ago, many people didn't know what it was, right? But look at what it's actually doing. Who cares that it's a techie buzzword?
Right.
It's actually working.
And it's saving money, and that's what's so crazy is, like, we all know at the end of the day what the result's going to be.
Right.
So why do we put it off for 18 months to come to the same result we could have reached a year earlier?
0 touches.
Right? 0 touches.
Not 7 touches per claim on both sides.
Time value money, the headaches reduction. It's a better relationship from both people because we're not pointing fingers back and forth. We're all agreeing, hey, look, each one of us are going to lose a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that as opposed to.
But you're going to gain, right? Most of the time, the ROI is there. That if you think that way, like bulk batch adjudication and settle up front, you're going to actually gain, and you're going to have, we should be doing this for the patient too, right? I wanted to ask you that earlier. With your solution, how is that impacting the patient? Because everybody's got a patient-centric patient-first initiative. So if I'm a patient and I'm out on the freeway and I get, banged up by a UPS truck and they're the responsible party, what's the experience for the patient?
So right now, there's no impact on the patient, right? They already had their out-of-pocket settlement.
Yeah.
I think as we go down that, we will continue to look at how can we apply this to reduce or some kind of reimbursement back to the patient if there is that type of a scenario. But the big thing is looking at Medicare was always supposed to be the payer of last resort.
Yeah.
And we all know it happens in hospitals where it's been 90 days, you haven't been in touch with the patient.
Right.
You're like, well, there's no sense putting more effort into it, knowing 30 days I can just drop and get paid, so people just give up on it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do, is change that behavior. I think ultimately you'll see us probably move more upstream to get involved with that.
That makes sense.
But what we really want to do is focus on the back end, show the value, get people comfortable with that concept, and then continue migrating further upstream.
Yeah, great. I wanted to ask, a question I've been asking folks, because there's, north of $250 billion of administrative waste in the revenue cycle alone. In a 5-year period, because you and I are on the same page about the tipping point, now is the time. Where do you think we're going to be 5 years from now? Like, how much of that waste can we value engineer?
Man, that's a tall order.
It is.
I think it's...
But we got to have, we got to get people a number. We can't just kick the can down the road and blah, blah, blah. We got to,
No, I think we definitely have to have specific goals, right?
Yeah.
I think if we could eat away at, say, a 10 to 15% reduction in that, and we not see a drop in the value or the impact on the patient to get those costs, because that's the challenge I've seen in so many industries, is they focus on this reduction, but at what cost?
Yeah.
There is a law of diminishing returns in play here.
Yeah.
But I do think if we can get on board with everybody adopting the technology, realizing that, hey, this will actually help us. It's not going to threaten my job.
Yeah.
It's not going to result in somebody we know losing their job. It's actually going to enhance it because they can be more productive.
Yeah.
I think we can have a significant impact.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more bullish. It's easy to be conservative, but it's kind of like, part of it is just, I think that we're at a point though where it has to happen, right?
Well, here's the only part that I struggle with on that. Like, I think all things equal, absolutely. But when I talk to some of my rev cycle leader friends, they said, Shay, look, these next 18 months I'm already planned out.
Yeah.
I've got an Epic Go Live coming up, new imaging software, all these things that don't result in cost savings. So if they're already booked out for the next 18 months, can't make any changes, what does that mean for us, right? And that's the only reason why I say it can't be more. It's squeezing these things in to what they've already got built into the roadmap.
Yeah, man, got to learn how to do some parallel processing, because that's a favorite. Wait until the grand new system of record. I won't even name names, but people are investing in many cases in a new system of record. They can't be a serial thing. So if you're going to wait, then there's hundreds of millions of dollars of leakage and inefficiency.
Well, name any other industry that would do that.
Yeah.
That would put everything on hold for 18 months because they're switching over their computer system.
See, the mindset change that I'm after is, like you mentioned earlier, COVID. So when folks, I sat in on a CEO panel that said, like, by the way, why were we all talking pre-COVID that telemedicine was going to take 5 to 7 years? And one of the CEOs said, well, that's because that's what we do. We like to talk and go on journeys. So when you have to do it,
absolutely,
then they got it done in a month.
Yes.
Now sure, you got to fine tune some things, and reimbursement's still a challenge in that area, but the core aspect of it got done, right? So we need to keep that. Don't forget about that. Hey, industry, don't forget that we did that.
What everybody said couldn't be done. And I think, Brian, you hit on the point. It's there. How can we encourage rev cycle leaders to take those kind of risks?
Yeah.
And not penalize them if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
I know a lot of systems have done a great job starting an innovation arm to look at these kind of things. But how many of them are willing to jump all in and say, you know what? This sounds awesome. Let's do it. Right? Like, they want to be very conservative. And I get it, because the blowback, if it's not, is huge. So there's a bigger reward for being safe than taking a risk, just like remote working. Everybody said it couldn't be done successfully. Now everybody's like, what took us so long.
Yeah,
We can't imagine going back into the office for our entire staff.
Even 5 years ago, I sat in on the HFMA of somebody that had taken a large-scale operation and made it work from home, and that was a rarity at the time.
Yeah.
Right? And now look at it. Right?
Yeah.
To your
No, I
point.
sat in on that same session.
It's
I think
the
I know
same-
who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
you do.
I just saw him walk by.
Guy from Texas.
Yeah, Jim Loxton.
Yeah.
That was for you,
That's
Jim.
the one. There's a plug for you, Jim.
But it's interesting too. So I think another thing that's going to be looking at is the carbon credits.
Yeah.
You know, that's another space we're focused on as well.
Yep.
So we're looking at the carbon credits that can accrue to hospital systems
Yep.
with these remote environments,
Yeah.
allowing them to accrue credits from people working from home.
Love that.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, we just signed a pilot with the city of Houston, the city of Austin,
Are they
Texas.
can you connect that to like ESG compliance, like federally
100%.
mandated ESG type
100%.
stuff? Yeah. Perfect.
So
Makes
these are the
total
kind of things I think that are out there that are different,
sense. Yeah.
right? They're outside the box. And so it's finding those right innovators
Yep.
within a health system. So you know what? That wasn't on my roadmap, but it makes sense.
Yep.
I can understand that. Let's look at it.
All right, so we have time for one more question, and I'm going to ask you, what did I miss? What should I ask you?
I think one of the things that we should be doing too is what can we do to promote a more healthier balance within healthcare
Uh-huh.
for rev cycle leaders, our teams, our clinicians to take better care of themselves mentally and physically.
Yeah.
The burnout, everything they've put
Yeah.
in through COVID.
Yeah.
Like, what can we do to promote people to maybe work less hours,
Yeah.
encourage them to get out, exercise,
Yeah.
and invest in their mental health?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I'm a little biased, but-
You're a highly credible person to say that, but I'm never going to try to keep up with you. Every time I see a picture of your gym, I'm like, oh, hell no.
Oh, the pain cave.
Yeah, the pain cave. Yeah. My pain cave is like a 6-string guitar and push-ups and sit-ups.
But that's what I'm talking about. The release that you get through
Yeah.
that, and that's what I try to get
You
about.
have to
You
have
don't
an outlet.
have to do an Ironman.
Yeah.
Find a passion,
Yeah.
pursue it 100%. Extra
Absolutely.
relief.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great advice. And, clearly mental and behavioral health is a big part of our industry, and there's a lot of innovation going on in that. But you're right, it's easy to forget, like cobbler's kids, like, we got to take care of ourselves.
Because nobody
If
can
we're
do
going to
it
be the
for us.
leaders driving this stuff,
100%.
take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Can I do a quick plug for a buddy of mine?
Sure.
So I'll be flying out tomorrow to run in Missoula, Montana.
Okay.
A buddy of mine is running, Greg Nance. It's called Greg Runs Far,
Okay.
to raise awareness for youth mental health.
Oh, that's great.
So he's trying to reach $100,000 in donations.
Great. Send me his link.
So I'll send that to you today. So he's
Yeah.
gotten 2,200 miles logged in.
Oh, nice.
So I'm going to go run 8 hours with him tomorrow to help him
Of
try to
course
reach
you
that
are.
goal.
Of course you are.
That's what friends do, right? You do what you can when you can.
Oh, you're so hard to keep up with. I'm going to run 8 hours tomorrow with my buddy.
It's therapy. It's
Yeah,
therapy.
no, well, you do a lot to help people in that regard every day. So
I've been blessed.
you're an
I've
inspiring
received,
dude.
Well, thanks, man. I've had a lot of people reach out and help me over the years.
Yeah.
And just seeing that light go off in somebody's head saying, that's possible. I
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah.
Like, you wish everybody could taste it.
Yeah, I
Right?
know.
If I could
when you do get those little endorphin highs from stuff like that's the kind of healthy dopamine that we need.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's a renewable drug. You can keep taking it. It's not going to do any damage. And
exactly. Well, thanks a lot, Shay.
hey,
It's
I
been awesome.
appreciate this. I love it.
As always, right? We could talk all day.
That's my wife says I talk way too much.
Oh. Do our wives talk to each other and say that?
They should.
Thanks a lot.
I enjoyed it.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.